It's that time of the month again. How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Movie Talk. And today's video, I'm going to be talking about everything I watched this July. It's what it sounds like. I won't waste anyone's time. Let's just jump into the video. I started this month off with ABCs of Death, which might truly be one of the most painful experiences I've ever put myself through. So it's an anthology movie, which each letter of the alphabet having a segment, and out of the 26 segments, there's only 7 that I actually liked. And of those 7, maybe a couple of them I actually really enjoyed. And it was just truly some of the worst filmmaking I've ever seen was in this film, and it genuinely hurt me watching this. There's this things that was so insanely bad that I just will never get that out of my head. Please avoid this movie at all cost. Then I watched Kinds of Kindness, which I actually rated 4 stars the first time I ever watched it. And I'll just talk about the first time experiencing it. It was something I've never really experienced before, because Kinds of Kindness is such a unique film, and it just goes so strange and goes so unique into Yorgos Lanthimos' style. And it's a movie that you really don't ever get to see made anymore. And it's a type of movie I'm really happy exists, because I love seeing these kinds of just weird, messed up movies that only Yorgos can think of, and I'm really happy it exists. Then I watched The Accountant, and it was a fine action movie. I didn't think anyone was particularly that interesting. I think Ben Affleck, his character and what he did and how he portrayed it was really well done, and that's really the biggest positive I have out of it. There's some good action scenes, nothing amazing that really got me super pumped about it all. I just thought it was a fine movie. There wasn't really anything that would make me ever want to rewatch it. I mostly watched it because they announced the sequel, and I was wanting to get around to it eventually, and I finally watched it, and I thought it was a fine movie. It was harmless, nothing really bad about it that I hated, but it was just nothing really did it for me. Then I watched Beverly Hills Cop, which I've never really watched a whole lot of Eddie Murphy, anything that he's done. I think when this movie works best, it's just him just blabbering constantly and just not stopping. I didn't think the mystery or any of the crime stuff was particularly that good. I think it mostly worked whenever it was just trying to be a fun comedy to let Eddie Murphy do his thing. But there's also a lot of serious actual drama that went with it too, because his character isn't just it's not like Deadpool, for example, where he's just constantly cracking jokes in every single situation, and sometimes he'll be serious. There's a lot of moments where he really goes from being really serious and then really funny, and I think that works really well. It's just whenever we do get to a lot of the serious stuff, I just don't think it was anything that powerful. And then I watched Minions. Why did I watch it? I don't remember. I just remember I watched it and it just kind of happened. I mean, it's the Minions. They're not really good movies, but they're fun movies. And my childhood was built on those Despicable Me movies and those Minion movies. And so, was it a good movie? No. Was it a fun, enjoyable movie that kind of is perfect for rekindling my childhood? Yes. So, I mean, you give it half a star rating, I wouldn't even blame you for it. It's just something that's really special for me. And then I watched Maxine, which the longer I think about it, the more I slowly start to hate it. The biggest problem with this is it was just such a dud of an ending for the trilogy. I loved X. I thought Pearl was completely useless and did not need to be made. And then Maxine's happens, and it's so mediocre. Because I think Maxine as a character is really interesting. I really loved seeing her exploring this world, but I predicted what the twist, who the killer was, probably about 15 minutes into the movie. I was thinking it's the killer who I think it is, and then it goes to the twist ending and who it actually is. Wow, I predicted it at the very beginning. Which, by the way, I'm horrible at predicting who the actual bad guy is, and all those murder mysteries and stuff. I'm horrible at picking the killer. The fact that I was able to guess it with barely any clues to begin with, which just shows that like it was just not a very interesting twist. And I think just where they went with the story is just like so bland, and just like that's where you wanted to do with it. Like it just really sucks because X was such a great start to the trilogy, and they just slowly got worse and worse, and I felt really depressed by the end because I thought that it had such a great start to this franchise, and then Ty West just killed it. Then I watched Despicable Me 4, and if you want to know where the 1.5 stars come from, it's because of the Minions and no one else. And the Minions were barely even in this movie. I legitimately think Despicable Me 4 is probably one of the worst animated movies I've watched in a while. Easily the worst in the franchise. Like, it's genuinely impressive, like, how many horrible things that you can do in a movie and string it all together. It was a series of things that happened that was, like, loosely stringed together by a plot. It was so horribly done, and it truly felt like they were just trying to get a Despicable Me movie out, and like they didn't put a whole lot more thought into it. I thought that nothing happened interesting with any of the characters. The story didn't even feel like it moved any at all. Like, I look at the end of Despicable Me 3 and then look at the end of Despicable Me 4. Nothing happens. There's no progression at all, and it was such a terrible experience to have to sit through it. I will say though, at least all the kids in my theater weren't talking the entire time, so it had that going for it. And then I watched Time Crimes, which I thought that it had a very good start to it, but by the time that it got to the end, I feel like it didn't do enough with the idea that it had, because the whole thing is like, it's all about time travel and stuff. I won't spoil anything, but everything happens because they're told that it has to happen, and then they just do it, and then the movie ends, and it never really feels like it works. I feel like they could have been doing like so much more, and I'm not even talking about like just because like it had a small budget. I feel like just the ideas that they came up with just felt like they all just fell flat, and it just seemed like you knew how it was going to end, and then you just watched it happen. And you didn't get any interesting revelations about the story, nothing. None of the characters are even that interesting to begin with. I couldn't even, by the time the movie was finished, I probably couldn't even tell you any of the names of the characters. And I get why people can enjoy it, but like, it just felt like it was missing something. It was missing that key piece to like really make this a really fun time travel movie. Because I really love these like complex time travel movies. Like, I still think that like, especially like looking at like Tenet or something. Like, I'm glad that people are slowly starting to realize the masterpiece that it is. But like, it just, I really loved so much about it. It was because like how much it goes into time travel. Or even Primer is the most confusing movie I've ever watched, and I still loved it because it just went so far into the time travel and added so much layers to it, and I really enjoyed it. And Time Crimes just felt like it was just a series of things, like I'm talking about in Despicable Me 4, a series of things that just happened. Then I watched Gladiator because the trailer was coming out, so I figured I finally had to get around to watching it. And I think it was a good movie. I understand why people call it a masterpiece. It's really not. It's a good movie, don't get me wrong. I think all the characters are very well done. But like, and then especially the action. But like, really, that's a masterpiece? It felt like a fine movie. There was some unnecessary things that happened with characters, with the Emperor. If you know what I'm talking about. Where like it just felt like, what's the purpose of this? Like, why are we watching this? And I mean, Maximus was a good character, but like it just didn't do it. Then I watched Tragedy Girls, which is a perfect example of a movie that was it was a fun experience that ultimately just everyone stayed the same by the end. If you look at the beginning of the movie and then look at the ending, nobody changes. and it just feels like I love watching movies where like you see characters and like just people evolving and turning into different types of people by the end. Not every movie needs to have it, but by the end, like by the time the movie was over, it just felt like they were just the only purpose of it was just to serve as like a starter for a franchise, and it just didn't. I mean, you can't just have a movie like that. You just like, hopefully, like this can make more movies and we can go from there. Like by the end, I just felt like I was just watching unlikable characters do things that just I didn't care about. And then I rewatched Kinds of Kindness again. That time, I will have to say it's a 4.5 star experience. This movie really does get better on rewatching. It doesn't make any more sense than it did last time, and I don't think I'm gonna ever really make sense of what happens in the movie, and I don't think you really need to. That's the beauty of it. It's these strange things that just like make you think about like what you watched and what the meaning of it all was. Especially, I still say, so a lot of people say that the first story is the favorite. Me personally, I think the second story is my favorite. I love that story so much just because of like all the strangeness and like what does it even mean, because like nothing really makes sense in that part, and I think that's kind of the fun of it, is that you just try to figure out what any of it means, like what the story about the dogs was the meaning, like what does the end meaning, like everything about that. Like it's a really fun experience to just think about what it is, and it's very easy to understand why people don't like this movie. I get it, but man, it works so well for me. Then I watched Fly Me to the Moon, which the main thing that killed this film was that it's so just mediocre. It felt like every single other rom-com that I've ever seen before. It didn't feel like it broke any new ground with the genre. It just seemed like it was just a movie that like, what if we do a romance movie that takes place during the Apollo space mission? And it just didn't really do anything with that concept to make it interesting. I think the characters were fine. Nothing great. Like I think the actors all did a good job with the roles, and it certainly is funny at times, but it just seemed like I felt like it was just okay. It felt like an unnecessary movie by the end of it. It just didn't seem like there was any purpose to it. And then I watched Longlegs, which, thinking about it now that I've had time to kind of marinate in that film, it's not the scariest movie I've ever seen. Nowhere near the scariest. But boy, it is a creepy film. It's a type of movie that gets under your skin and stays there and doesn't leave, and it makes you just want to crawl into a ball and just cry, because there's like moments where like I felt so intense, like I had to just like close myself off with the rest of the world, because like there's some truly disturbing things that happen with it. And I think that another thing that really adds another layer to how good it is just Nicolas Cage, because him just screaming in this movie and just like acting like, there she is. That's horrible with how it actually sounds like in the movie, but still, you get my point. That like he's so creepy and like it just like it makes me feel gross just like being around him. And I think that's just what makes this movie work so well, is that it capitalizes on the creepiness of it and it goes fully into it. Okay, I'm gonna butcher the title of this, but next I watched Titan. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm not French, so I don't know. There were a lot of good ideas with this. Especially the ending, I really enjoyed the ending. I think that it has a lot of interesting ideas that it portrays, and especially there's a really fun sequence towards like the middle, that kind of kicks off what the actual plot is about, when the main character was inside the building and she kind of does that stuff. Have you seen the movie, like what she does in the movie? It's a very fun sequence. But I think it has a lot of interesting ideas that just didn't fully connect well, and it didn't make me feel anything from it. And it's certainly a movie that most likely can probably get better upon rewatches, because I think there's a lot of substance there to really fill in the void that I kind of felt when I left the movie. And it's just a movie I don't want to talk about too much on my first watch. I think it's something that really is designed that's needed to have more of a rewatch. And I mean, it was good enough to win the Palme d'Or, so I'm probably missing something with it. But yeah, I'm probably not going to talk about it too much. Just kind of leave it there and just wait for a rewatch to kind of tell me what I thought about it. And then I watched American Fiction, which I kind of missed out on that movie whenever it first came out, because I remember hearing a lot of things about it, a lot of buzz, and then I just never really got around to watching it. So I finally decided to sit down and watch the film, and it's a really funny movie. And I really think the biggest part that makes it work so well is the characters and how they all interact with each other, as well as the whole plot, the main plot about writing the book, and then everyone thinks it's really good whenever he designed it to be a bad book, and then all the shenanigans that gets entangled with all that. I think it's a fun movie. I think that it's a really cool and interesting perspective into issues that we're all constantly talking about. It's probably going to be a constant issue for a long time now, but I think it gives an interesting perspective, and kind of like what Get Out did, and not in this it's probably a bad comparison, but the point is it gives an interesting look into ideas that I've thought about a lot, and kind of gives me new fresh perspectives on it. But I mean, Jeffrey Wright was so good in this movie. I think he's the real core, the core reason for why it worked as well as it ended up working. And yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it a lot. I mean, I had a lot of fun. Go watch it if you can. And then I watched Twisters, which is a really fun movie, but it doesn't really have a whole lot of depth to it outside of the main actual character. I just wanted to say something. So skip this part if you haven't seen the movie yet or not, if this is going to be a spoiler. And so skip this part. But so you've been warned. The ending, I really thought that it was a good idea that they didn't kiss at the end, because this movie isn't about them connecting with each other. It's about her learning what she really loves, and to get over past traumas and to explore herself. This movie isn't about those two people. It's about Tyler and what's her name? Kate. I don't know why I was blanking on her name. But the movie isn't about Tyler and Kate finding each other and connecting. It's about Kate going through her past and overcoming the problems that she's had. And I think that's where the movie really works. But outside of that, no one else is really that interesting or that cool. It was a good popcorn flick to watch. And it's really about it. It's a good movie. I'm happy that it exists and that it made a lot of money, but there's not really a whole lot more past it. And then I've been wanting to watch this for a long time now, but I finally got to Call Me By Your Name, which, boy, my God, that is how you make a movie. So I'm also not Italian, so I don't know fully how to pronounce his last name, but Luca Guadagnino, I think that's how you say it. That's how I'm going to say it. I'm going to call him Luca, just make it more easy. He is one of the best filmmakers working nowadays, and I think that what makes him work so well is in none of his movies he looks at them as movies. The most recent two that I've watched, Call Me By Your Name and Challenges, which, by the way, second best movie of the year. That was such a good movie. But those two movies, he looks at it like what they actually are. They're art pieces. They're art. It's not entertainment. They're not just movies. It's actual art. And he makes such a fine-tuned, raw and just perfectly well-oiled machine to make a movie work so well. And that's what I think that makes this movie work so well. is it's all just so masterfully done. Every single shot, every single cut, and the length of the take and everything all has its reasons. And it, especially the editing. I think the editing is where the movie truly shines and makes it feel like something special. And it sucks that we're not gonna get what like the before treatment that what happened with the before trilogy, like the characters meet every like 10 or so years, because I mean we all know what happened with Armie Hammer. And so it sucks that we're not gonna get another kind of movie like that. But I mean, at the same time, I kind of enjoyed where the movie ended, and I felt like it was a fitting end. And I mean, we're never going to get another one, but I'm happy about it. I'm so looking forward to every single movie he does next, because there's legitimately like maybe a handful of directors that are better than him that I can name on my single hand. He's just that good. And then I watched Hardcore Henry, which is a really good and unique perspective in action movies, because it's shot all in first person. And that was really cool, because you don't really ever see movies like that. You never see anything shot in first person. And that really was cool. But because of it and how cheap the budget was, a lot of the action was meh. The chase on the highway chase, where like he's jumping from car to car and like all that stuff, or the fight in like that abandoned factory or whatever, that was all pretty well done. But outside of that, a lot of the action was just fine, and a lot of what this movie relies on is the action. And so I think it's a really cool look into like what a first person movie looks like. But I feel like there was a lot of just shallow characters, a really bland villain. Like he was really like just the most one-dimensional person I've ever seen in my life. And it was a cool concept, and I think they succeeded for the most part. I think they succeeded with the movie that they were trying to do, and it worked perfect. It worked well. It just didn't do anything that crazy to make me think that like this is an amazing action movie. And then I watched Tree of Life, which I really wish that I didn't watch this movie like so many years ago. I think I watched it like, I want to say 3 years ago, and I was much younger and like didn't fully understand film like I do now. I still don't fully understand film. I'm talking like I know what I'm talking about. I ramble and hope that I sound smart, but that's what I'm going to do with this. Tree of Life is so close for me to be seen as a masterpiece, and it's a really good movie. Like so much of the movie is just shots of people walking around doing stuff with a voiceover, and it's such a like I said with Call Me by Your Name, it's a fine-tuned, like well-oiled machine where everything was done with a masterful purpose for some kind of philosophy or anything. Or like the birth of the universe sequence, and you'll see through the entire history of the universe. That was probably one of my favorite parts of the movie, because I love it whenever like I can just stop thinking, just stop doing everything, and just watch this movie and just see everything that's happening. And it's a good movie to just like, you can either watch it like just turn your brain off and just like see this philosophical questions and answers that go way above your head, but also it's really good to just like think about it and think about what they were trying to say with this movie. Terrence Malick is truly, like, I say that Luca Guadagnino is one of my favorite directors working now, and there's only a handful that are better. This is one of the directors that I'd say is better, because I feel like he just only makes masterpieces. Like, that's really when it comes down to it. Like, he just only makes perfect movies. And then I watched The Passenger, which if you haven't watched this movie, go watch it, because it's so genuinely just a perfect example of what like a contained like horror thriller should be like. There's a lot of really good characters in this movie, and like you don't have a lot of screen time, but whenever they are on screen, they work like really well. Like they all like feel like their own unique people. And this one character in particular, which I won't talk about it too deep, where you see her what happened in the past, and then like how like she's learned to just forgive and forget, and seeing like just genuine wholesomeness that came out of a terrible situation. It makes me really happy. And it was really weird because like there's some like really messed up things and like bleak things that happen in this movie, but it has that hopefulness, like that genuine joy that you get out of like seeing just like good things happening to good people. And there's certainly bad things that happen to good people, and like that, like the main antagonist definitely is a very bad person who does some really horrible things. But it was such a good and happy movie that I found by the end of the movie, and I felt like the strange sense of joy about what I saw. I really think, especially the main character, like what he goes through his entire journey, and like what he has to overcome with it, it's all really well done. And like I just want to point out, like the opening, like the beginning of the movie, like when the actual film like legitimately kicks off, it's so bloody and so violent. It comes out of nowhere. Like you see like a slow build up to like what's going to happen, but you don't fully get prepared for it by the end, like when it actually starts happening. And I just, please watch this movie because not enough people have seen it and more people need to watch it. And then I watched Deadpool and Wolverine, which it's not a good movie thematically. Whenever you're looking at like what makes a movie good, it's a fine movie, but what makes this movie really stand out is just how purely fun it is and how much of a joy it is, like be able to just like sit through all those raunchy jokes and everything that Deadpool does and his interactions and fights with Wolverine. It's all really joyful. And I just want to point out, the opening of the movie does not ruin Logan. It's made a joke and stuff. It's like a lot of jokes and stuff. It likes really wild things that happen with like that involve the movie Logan, but it doesn't ruin anything that happens. It's all still impactful, and it's fully, what really makes it so worth it is that people forget what happens later on in the movie with the one character. Okay, everyone's seen this movie. Anyone who hasn't has probably seen the trailer, so it's not a spoiler because they showed it in the trailer. But when X-23 shows up, everything that happens with her character is proof that it doesn't disrespect Logan, and it doesn't ruin anything that happened with it. And that's why like I feel like it works so well, is because it's just everything that happened in that movie had a great impact on X-23, and like she's actually she's has things that happen now, and like her character is built around what Logan did in the Fox universe. And that's what I think works so well about it, is that just everything that happens with the Fox universe has just been like a nice send-off to everything that they did up to that point. And I really love the Fox X-Men movies. There's a lot of ups and downs with the franchise, but by the end, like it just brings a smile to your face, and it makes you genuinely happy. And then I watched Love Lies Bleeding, which that was a big movie that's probably going to be in a lot of people's top 10 by the end of the year. And I didn't end up watching it in theaters. I finally got around to watching it now. And, the movie wasn't clicking with me. I thought it was a good movie, but I didn't see why people were loving it. But by the time it got to the final third of the movie, that's when everything really started to click and everything really started to work well. Because I really enjoyed where they went in that final third of the movie. Mainly once in Vegas it gets introduced, like the actual location. And then like on that point forward, then it really started to work and I really started to love it. And it might end up in my top 10, but if not, like I still had a lot of fun with the movie. I still really enjoyed everything they did, especially the characters, like the complexity of a lot of the people and everything that goes on. I really enjoyed a lot of that. So I really like the movie. And then I just had to watch one more movie after it. Very recently, I watched Rebel Moon Part 2. I talked about it in another video. I posted a few days ago a video about what the problem with Zack Snyder, and I really go over a lot of the problems with Rebel Moon Part 2, but I'll just sum it up mostly for you all. The entire movie, it's 2 hours long. It felt like 30 minutes of story actually happened. It's insane how much they stretched out the farming and all that slow motion in the first hour, and then it was a lot of action that didn't even feel like a lot of stuff was happening, but that managed to last an entire hour. I have no idea how they managed to make this 2 hours long. That's all the slow motion. But it's the only positive I have about this movie was that at least it didn't feel like 2 hours. It came and went pretty quickly. It really did zoom by, and so I wasn't like sitting there for what felt like 5 hours and it just pointlessness that was happening. However, I am not looking forward to watching those director's cuts. Oh man, I'm gonna be watching them from start to finish at the beginning of the morning, and then I'm gonna be recording my video and then publishing that on Saturday. I am not looking forward to that at all, and I'm genuinely, I'm dreading Friday. But yeah, I mean, that's everything that I watched this month. I mean, what did you watch? I mean, do you agree with what I said? Do you disagree with what I said? I mean, tell me all your thoughts down below in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe, share the video if you want, because it all really helps out. I'm trying to grow as a YouTuber. It feels weird to say, but I'm trying to make my content better. I'm always trying to improve in every single way. I mean, yeah, that's really all to say about this month. So I guess I'll see you same time next month for what I watch in August. But until then, that's Movie Talk. See ya.